Before we start again with Mr. Hill, have you been able to talk about timing of parties, or what are your ideas for the timing of the day?
We have not had an opportunity to talk. Happy to do that.
Sorry, it's not working. I know it looks like
Yeah. We have not had an opportunity to talk yet. Happy to do that at the next break, or we can talk even now. My own thinking is with this cross-examination as well as the one to follow, I would suspect we're not going to be finishing the experts until lunchtime. And I think all along the idea was that closing arguments would be this afternoon. I think that's how it's shaping up. I don't think we could expand the time unless you disagree. Just given the time left in the day after the experts will have completed their testimony.
That sounds about right. We have an early lunch break and resume with opening statements in the early afternoon. Closing statements, yes.
Is it possible to finish early this morning? In your opinion?
I have a couple of topics that are kind of discrete. I'd like to touch it. We may be able to finish and with Mr. Hill probably about an hour and a half, and then we go to Mr. Sparks.
With our cross-examination, Mr. Sparks should be well below 1 hour. Well below 1 hour.
Good. Do you think you will? You can this afternoon. You can have 2 hours if you want. Do you have any idea how much you need?
I think 2 hours would be fine for us.
For both of us? That sounds about right, with some degree of flexibility.
You can speak less. We're flexible.
Okay. Just one other point. Although the tribunal had, of course, indicated its wishes that we focus more on the legal issues and treat the closing argument more as rebuttal to Monday's opening statements, it still strikes us that the order from the tribunal that respondent would go first on jurisdiction, claimant then responds, then claimant goes first on merits, respondent then responds, is still the appropriate order, because if it's rebuttal, that's the natural sequence.
Yes, yes. Unless you agree on something else, that's fine.
So that's how we're preparing our presentation.
Okay.
But just, would you mind if we distribute, for purposes of closing, our notes with all the references we want to rely on? I think for ease of reference, it would be more user-friendly.
Your notes?
Just, it's basically in form of an outline, something like this. Instead of the PowerPoint, basically, it's just an outline with references. It's something we're going to read and develop. What we're going to say orally is going to be more than the outline, just for ease of reference.
All I can say, if you have not prepared a PowerPoint, you don't have it, and it's not necessary to have one, but we need references.
Yes,
definitely.
yes. This is the idea behind it.
Okay. So, Mr. Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Hill. How are you today?
Good morning, Mr. President. Copy your notes.
Mr. Hill, I'd like to go back to something that we touched upon yesterday. I wanted to direct you to Exhibit R-139, which is a first go table we were looking at yesterday. And that would be on
Number 10.
tab number 54 on the binder. It'll be page 6 of that exhibit. were discussing yesterday this figure 1 and the continuing pendulum of risk is the term that we were using. And you were telling us that on this figure, the risk would go from exploration results as being the more subject to risk or the higher risk, and you will go down to inferred, indicated, measured, then switch over to the right-hand column for probable and proven. And on this table, the proven mineral reserves would be on this table the least risky.
That's what we discussed yesterday.
Thank you.
But I'd like to point out, having read this, this publication here has been superseded. This is an obsolete publication. So I'd like you to actually acknowledge that there's a more up-to-date publication than this one, which is now obsolete.
Okay, is that updated one on the record, sir?
No, it's not.
Okay,
This
thank
is-
you.
But the updated one makes this document obsolete.
Okay, and does, but this table would be the same in that updated one?
The table is the same, but
Thank you.
no, but there's an amendment in the updated version which is different,
Okay, thank you.
which is referenced to this table.
Okay, thank you. Now, you would agree with me, sir, that Rossman did not have any proven reserves?
Absolutely, there was no mineral reserves,
Okay, but there were no proven mineral reserves,
no proven mineral reserves,
no probable mineral reserves,
no probable mineral reserves,
no measured mineral resources.
no measured.
Okay. Some, according to your testimony yesterday, indicated mineral resources.
Having read the updated version of this, there's more than some.
Okay, well, I don't think that we can make reference to a document outside of the record.
I don't think we can make reference to a document that is obsolete
Okay,
and
well,
has been superseded,
okay,
because it is very clear in the competent person's element in there that you must refer to the updated table.
so when was that updated?
It's on the internet
Okay, but when? Give me a date, approximate date.
in 2013.
Okay, so in 2003, when we're talking about, it was this table.
No, not at all. This, in 2003, this table, because in 2003, because Crisco started in 1999 under the Denver Agreement, this has moved on several variations since 2003 and updates.
Okay, so,
I haven't got a full list of all the updates. I did not go backwards because I was relying on the new one, which is what they call the legal one,
Okay.
making this one obsolete.
okay. We also saw yesterday a document, which is on tab 59, which is a circular from Belmont to its shareholders. It'll be R109. And I believe your testimony was that it referred to inferred mineral resources. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Hill, would you direct that microphone a bit better towards you?
Is that okay? Can you hear me? Thank you. Could you please reaffirm me which page?
Sure. I believe it was page 10 of that document.
Yes.
Okay, and I believe the phrase they use is drilled infer resource.
Yes.
Okay, and that would correlate with what we have seen in this figure 1, correct? The term inferred
The
resource.
term refers to their, subsequently to those 40 drilled holes that they're referring to, there was an additional 6 holes.
I understand, but we're not going there yet. I just want to know if that term correlates with what is on this figure 1 of the Crisco standards.
I'm assuming because inferred is in different standards.
Okay. Now, sir, we briefly touched yesterday on the Kloth-Hoffer study, which is C158. And that would be on, I'm sorry, C154. And that is on tab 52 of your binder and the tribunal's binder. Now, this report and I apologize because I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's on tab 52, I'm sorry, tab 52, my apologies. It's the D.I. Castle and Kloiphofer report. For short, I'm just going to refer to it as the Kloiphofer report or Kloiphofer study. Now, you read claimant's reply, correct? In this case?
Yes.
Okay, so you agree with me that they place a lot of stock on this Kloiphofer study?
And other information, I would assume.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to read you a statement made in Ms. Claimant's reply. That would be paragraph 254, and we have added that to tab number 60. Get there, please. So I want to direct you to actually paragraph 299. And you know you're there. And I'm going to read you the second sentence of that paragraph that says, with this study, and they're referring to the Kloiphofer study, Rosman critically increased the proven reserves of talc in the extraction area. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, this reference to proven reserves, that's not accurate. You would agree with me on that?
Not under the mining code, one of the mining codes, it's not accurate,
Thank you.
because there's no such definition under the mining code.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to go and focus a little bit more detail on this Kloiphofer report. It's my understanding, and you know, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you know, according to the claimants and specifically to these paragraphs that I have shown you, or that are in front of you of their reply, that you know, it is their understanding or their argument at least that the Kloiphofer report, and I think the term they use is contributed to de-risking the deposit. And specifically on paragraph 302 of their reply, they cite to the finding of contiguous in that report. Do you see that? They say, they quote and they say, while compiling a 3D representation of the extraction area's rich sections, Kloiphofer found, are you with me?
Yes.
Kloiphofer found, contrary to the assumption on the basis of which the feasibility study, and I'll submit to you that they're referring to the earlier feasibility study for Mr. Heidecker, had been prepared, namely that the distribution of talc in the deposit was not systemic. That was the earlier conclusion. But Kloiphofer found that, and I quote, almost all of the rich sections are contiguous. From a technical standpoint, this implied that the talc extraction process would be much more effective than initially anticipated. You see that?
Sorry, could I correct you? It would be much more cost effective.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself. You see that?
Yes, I see that.
So help me to understand, is the technical case before this tribunal that this finding of contiguous was important from a perspective of de-risking the deposit?
I don't know if it's important. Yes, it's certainly part of the chain. There are so many aspects that come through. The Kloiphofer report, which could I remind me which page it's on so I could
Yes,
just
of
read the
course.
front
It's
page?
the, let's see, it's tab 52.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Thomas.
It's okay.
It's for Rosman in Slovakia, in Slovakia, they do not recognize the word resource. Everything has to be classified as a reserve, whether it's a resource or a reserve. They have their own mining wording.
Okay.
So their understanding to be contiguous or not, it's, I'm not sure if it's purely drawn from the Klophofer report or he drew it from other aspects as well in his findings.
When you say he, who?
Klophofer.
So, I'm sorry, I thought, you said
But
that
Klop-
he drew it from where?
No, his report, I'm just trying to, is it Klophofer who found it contiguous, or was it the summary in the feasibility study?
It was Claude Hoffer.
Yes, so how he's come to that, he's made that statement, I don't know.
So, okay, you don't know the basis for him to reach that statement?
I can see from his cross-sections, he's confident, yes, but yes, he's drawn it from his claims, but I don't know if that's alone,
Okay.
if that's solely alone.
Why don't you, for the benefit of the tribunal, explain what contiguous would mean in the context of a talc mine, and specifically with respect to the Gumerska Paloma mine?
It would be contiguous because the talc was multi-banded.
Okay, what exactly?
It's layer upon layer. It's like a cake. So there's bands of barren rock and bands of cake. That's my understanding.
So contiguous means it's layered,
No,
or is it the opposite?
No, it is layered. He has found it's that the continuity in the deposit is far greater than what was believed initially.
All right, so your understanding is that his finding of contiguous is consistent with the fact that it's layered.
I guess so. I assume so. It is certainly layered, and he has identified within his report the continuity of the layering. You have talc at high grades in excess of 10 meters. This is very mineable and very, very easy to model.
Okay, and before that, what was the before this finding of contiguous, what was the understanding from a technical perspective of how the talc layers laid, so to speak?
The layering was there, but it was not mapped. You have the boreholes with sections, but actually mapping it out gives you that continuity, and so the confidence that the bands actually join up. It's a massive folded structure, where before you've got the results, and it's difficult to put together, but now you can actually map it out. You certainly, from even 2000 to now, the software to do this is being developed all the time. In 2000, this was quite crude software.
Okay. But you haven't seen the basis for his conclusion that this was continuous?
I haven't seen the research.
Okay. Now, in terms of, sorry, let me gather my thoughts. Now, a finding of continuity, and I'm going to just submit to you that I'm using that word interchangeably with contiguous, which is what he uses. It would be, we could use contiguous or continuous. Which one would be more technically appropriate?
For me, being simpler, continuous, but
I thought so. I like that too.
But I don't know if that is the correct interpretation.
Okay, well,
That
let's
is
assume it is
my-
for
my
purposes of our
assumption.
conversation.
It's my assumption.
It's a little hard for me to pronounce contiguous. So assuming that contiguous is synonymous with continuous, was this an important finding?
It was another finding. It's not earth-shattering. It's a finding. It can be assumed, but to prove it would have been difficult. But he was proving it at this point.
Okay, and having proven that, was that a significant step in the development?
No, it was just another step. Not significant. It's
So
another step.
So you would not consider it significant?
No?
No.
It's all part of developing the deposit. It's not just the geology. It's the geology is an important part of it. We're making our discussion on the Christos code because the Christos code actually has a specific definition for industrial mineral resources, which is different to the heart of the code.
Now, was this an encouraging finding?
It's given them a few more tons.
Okay. So it would be important for purposes of the quantity?
No, in the scope of things, the small area he looked at was in fact a very minute area that was under the magnifying glass, and this is given a sort of 5% uplift on 1 or 2% of the whole deposit.
Okay, so this finding of continuous, and I'm sorry, because I had not, this is a little bit technical, but I had not looked at that. So this finding of continuous pertains to that minute area that he was looking at?
Yeah, he was looking at the extraction area, which you've got in your reply here, you've highlighted. He was looking at this area alone.
Okay.
Of continuous it hasn't been extrapolated beyond, but with his working here and other work, this is what brings the confidence that this is moved from inferred to indicated.
Okay, so it was significant finding then, if it moved it a notch, so to speak.
In the quantity of the size of the deposit, no, because this is such a small area, it's a small stepping stone.
Okay.
Very small. There is other stepping stones which are far more significant.
Okay. Would, let's say, an investor consider this an important finding?
Not in the word important, the investor would consider it. It's not earth-shattering finding. What it does, it brings you closer to a position of confidence to actually now move into underground development.
Okay. Now, I'm going to refer now to your supplemental report, page 2, at the top. And you know that you have read Mr. Sparks, before I get to that, you've read Mr. Sparks' expert reports, right?
I have.
And you understand that he contests this finding of continuous.
Yes, I've noticed he contests the geology of the deposit.
Well, he contests the finding of continuous. Does he not?
Yes, but he says it is continuous because of the folding. So there's quite a contradiction in my mind. I understand what Mr. Sparks is getting to on a geological point, that it's not cleanly defined. But what is defined is the folding. It's a hydrothermal intrusion, and so hydrothermal intrusions work just like a river.
Okay.
So it has that snake effect. So the definitions around it, I understand as a geologist 100% what is being said, but it's not a contradiction, but in words it is a contradiction.
Now let me put it to you this way. Would it be accurate to say that this finding of continuous applied to the entirety of the deposit?
Yes, I would say the deposit was continuous.
The entirety of it, not just that distinct area?
Not just that area, the whole area.
Okay. Now, based on this Claude report,
No, not based on that. You would have to carry out further work to define. It is just my view. It would be continuous through the whole deposit. It's reasonable. It's not based on that report. It's based on the borehole sampling. I would consider it would be continuous through the whole deposit.
okay, but not the finding of this Claude report at the time, in the year 2000, was not, and I just want to be clear on this one, was not continuous throughout the whole deposit.
No, that report was very specific modeling of a small area.
Now, going back to your supplemental report on that first paragraph, you say, to the contrary, and you are questioning Mr. Sparks' criticism of the report, the finding of continuance. He said, I'm of the opinion that the very positive conclusions of the Kloiphofer 2000 study enhanced the level of confidence with respect to the talc resource. I'd like to explain to us, please, what you mean by very positive conclusions.
The positive conclusion is moving it from an inferred to an indicated.
Based on the finding of continuance?
Not based on the finding, based on his assessment of the tons and that's not the only thing in the report. He has moved that area to a high level of confidence based on your chart, and based on, for example, that chart is quite a simplistic view across all codes or anywhere. That is giving you a greater confidence of the deposit.
Okay, so it wasn't that the finding of continuance moved the needle, it was the other conclusions in the report.
It's all together, all part of it. It's not just one thing. The needle moves, as you pointed out, in here, there's all the additional borehole drilling that was carried out at a larger diameter. This could be large-scale tested, so all these things are giving the investors, the owners, greater confidence.
The investors greater confidence. So this is something you want to communicate to the investors, I assume.
I would assume so.
Okay. So if we go through the documents, we should see some reference to this. If we go through the subsequent technical reports that were prepared, and that investors saw, we should be seeing these findings there, I assume.
I would assume so.
Okay. Sir, did you visit the mine for purposes of preparing your report?
I asked to visit the mine and equally speak to people, but I did not have that luxury. I was informed that it was not convenient.
Who did you ask?
I asked my lawyer, the claimant.
Okay. Did you speak with the mine operator?
No, I could not do that.
Okay. So you have no current information on how the deposit is coming along from the current mine operator?
The information I have that from 2005 to 2009 they developed the incline. 2009 to 2011 they carried out underground drilling and sampling. That was completed in September 2011. After 2011, the deposit has carried out some mining, and some 20,000 tons of talc has been mined since 2011. So the mining operation commenced in 2011. They have now announced that there will be completion of the process plant in 2017. But equally, I see on this there will be a delay to that to possibly 2018, which is not unusual for completion of the process plant.
Okay. Now, the Kloiphofer report, this finding of continuance and the other findings that you said moved the needle, this was based on, I believe, 7 new holes that were drilled between, I believe it was 1997 and 1999, correct?
Not based on all of them. Two holes. One hole was so 3 holes didn't really support it. One hole was drilled to find the limit of the deposit, hole number 41, and that secured the limit of the deposit in one direction. One hole was a twinning hole, which is to confirm the quality of the area, and the hole number 45 was a bulk sampling hole. Now this drilling does reinforce your grid, if you like, but their purpose was to go beyond the grid to obtain further information.
Okay, so before the Kloiphofer report, before the prior report, which was a Heidegger feasibility study, which was dated, I believe, 1997, and the Kloiphofer report, which is dated year 2000.
Yes.
We have those 7 boreholes.
Yes,
Okay. And one of them was to the limit.
of the whole deposit, not for the extraction area, for the deposit. Within that time, they mapped out the deposit to be roughly just over 2 kilometers by 800 meters, and that was the mapping then. VSK now have mapped it at 2.7 kilometers by 1.2 kilometers. This deposit is about 200 meters in depth. So they've mapped it out. They have not carried out any additional borehole drilling to do this from the surface. All they've carried out is an intensive drill pattern underground in a small location.
Okay. Now, the prior reports, prior to the Kloiphofer report, and I'm going to focus specifically on the Hansa Geomid report, which is C137, and that'll be tab number 10 on the, it's open already in front of you, and this will be respondents bundle, tab number 10.
This is the DEG feasibility study, tab number 10.
I believe it's the DEG study. I've been told that it is not a feasibility study, so I won't necessarily stipulate to that one, but I believe it is a DEG study, yes.
The title says analysis and evaluation of the feasibility study.
I agree with that. I believe it's an analysis and evaluation of the prior feasibility study.
Yes, yes, it's, the feasibility studies, as with the different mining codes, have developed. It is not a feasibility study of 2016. It certainly is a feasibility study from 1998.
Okay, now, this report, which is prior to Kloiphofer, has no conclusion on continuity. Am I correct?
From memory, I can't recall. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I honestly, I can't remember seeing its omission or inclusion.
Okay, well, let's go through it. Maybe I'll show you a couple of passages here, and you'll tell me if you agree. So, on whether or not it has a finding of continuity. So, if you go to page 9 of this report, it's Exhibit C137. If you go to there, paragraph under section 2.2, paragraph 1, the second to last sentence reads, the variation in thickness from 2 meters to 400 meters of the mineralized rock suggests intense faulting in addition to folding. You see that?
Yes.
And then I also want to direct your attention.
Is that in to connect with continuity? That is quite in line with continuity. The folding, there is faulting. The faulting will break it up, but it is such a layered cake. The different layers still will still run, and the folding is in line because it is like a river that is initially formed it through hydrothermal intrusion that has formed it, and that's why you have the mineralization has been seen in with it, such as the pyrite and also tin cassiterite is seen with it.
But they don't reach that conclusion here, that it is continuous.
No, they've just made a statement.
Now, if you go to page 10, paragraph 6, it says the complicated structure and the varying intersection length of the talc-bearing formation and its limited lateral extent requires underground exploration work before and during the mine development. It cannot be done by drilling further surface holes. You see that?
Yes.
You agree with that statement, sir?
Yes?
And there's no mention of continuity or no implication of that in this paragraph?
Not at all. This is absolutely mining practice everywhere. You do not establish and confirm your mining method until you have an intense exploration. Exactly as VSK, when they finished the adit, they have spent 2 years exploring the area from 2009 to 2011 to establish not just the quality, but more importantly, establish a mining method to adopt. So they would have done bulk sampling, probably the source of their 20,000 tons, but they would have done bulk mining trials underground before finalizing their mining method with the respective legal authorities. This is normal.
Okay, and this, you would actually have to access the deposit from within to do this?
Yes,
You cannot do it from the surface?
you physically have to mine
Okay, thank you.
It's part of the exploration before you bring your business into a commercial operation.
So if you go to page 16, please. The last paragraph in that page says, a better knowledge of the distribution of high-grade mineralized parts in the deposit after an initial operation period of a few years should guide for mine management to adapt the mining method. So is this consistent with what you just described would be the way to do it, so to speak? Meaning you would first have to open it and access it from within to be able to map it?
It's not just the mapping, but you have to enter the ore body. You have perceived mining methods from your core samples, so you can narrow down your ideas, but you cannot come up with a final idea. In this case, there is a debate whether you require a sort of a sub-level caving method or a room and pillar method, and whether you can extract the ore out and leave the cavity, or you can extract the ore out and you have to backfill it to maintain the competence of the ground. I'm sorry if it's not described well enough, but considering it is talc, this is quite a soft commodity, so your chamber you would leave would be quite soft. So the preferred mining method prior to entry was a room and pillar. A room and pillar, it's just as it says. You would excavate a room and leave some pillars in the room, and before you then mine further, you would then fill this room with a waste product, where there's several different options, but add some cement into that waste product. So that room would then be refilled, so you could move to the next block without destabilizing the ground.
So just so I get the sequence, right, so basically you're trying to figure out what's the best mining method, one of those two, but before you do that, you need to do the underground mining to be able to map and see how the resources, I don't know if the correct term is distributed or located or...
No, you would expose the ore body with some tunnels, but you would not have to expose the ore body to actually understand it. This is where your underground drilling, from the surface drilling, you have a very good view, but you do not have a close view. So you would go underground, which is the plan, and is exactly what VSK have done. You would open up chambers and drill holes of maybe 20, 50, 100 meters. You would not drill the entirety of the ore body. You would drill that area, probably just that extraction zone.
Okay.
The length and the holes they drilled I'm not aware of, but I wouldn't believe that they were greater than 100 meters because of the ground conditions. I would even say they're a lot less because of the talc being soft. The hole stability would limit the drilling you could do from one area. So that's why it says here, it's ongoing. So as you mine, you would go forward and then open up areas to prove and actually accurately establish the continuity of the ore bodies, and this would then bring you the knowledge where the faulting was and discontinuities, but also bring you the knowledge of the grades.
Okay.
Some of the top bands are very narrow, some are very massive. So you would then manage how to mine the different bands.
So,
Sorry.
no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Some small bands may be, in simple terms, uneconomic to mine. Some large bands may need several cuts to actually mine them out. They could not be mined as one block.
Okay, so, this would be, if you were to do this, you know, you were to go underground and do, you know, the underground mining, drilling that you need to do to be able to map it out, this would move the pendulum towards a lower risk, I would assume.
Absolutely. Once you got underground, you could not move it. Once you've developed your adit underground, the inferred and indicated remains the same. Once you expose the ore body, then you can start bringing in measured reserves.
Okay.
Once you expose the ore body, until you actually expose the ore body, you've only got the confidence of indicated. Exposing the ore body is what moves it to measured.
Okay. And Rosman did not do this, right?
Absolutely not, no.
Now, sir, going back to the finding of continuous in the Hansen study, EEG study, would you expect this kind of finding? Well, I mean, I think we have already established that you would expect it to be found in the documents that the mine would, or the mining company would prepare its planning and its perspective. We could use that term liberally.
I would, if it was there, it was there. I wouldn't actually automatically expect it to find it in a feasibility study of 1998.
Okay. Is this something you would expect to find in a POPE?
No, I wouldn't expect to find it in there, because the Pope is almost taking the geological information as a given and is summarizing other information. So the Pope would be in the frames of a review of what already exists.
Okay, so basically, if I take a snapshot in time, first of all, why don't you explain for the members of the tribunal what a POPE is? I think that might be able to frame it a little bit better.
It's a development plan for the business in short terms. It's laying down what the plan will be to get approval from the respective authorities. This is our plan. A POPE is a mark in time, and it's continually updated going, and a lot of the updates are amendments to a POPE, and then maybe after 1 year or two, when there is a significant amount of changes, there is a revision to the POPE. When you have changes, you discuss it with the authorities, and you can actually progress discussions of where you're going before a new POPE is submitted.
Okay. In your experience, would, for example, an investor, private equity or private capital that is looking to invest in a mine would say, I want to see your POPE?
I've never seen one asked for. Equally, it would probably be included in the bundle, but the investor would look at the feasibility study and the finances. The investor wouldn't go as far as looking at the POPE. This is more of a business for the government and the operator.
What else would be in the bundle?
There would be competent persons reports.
And in the case of Rossman, whose reports would that be? Would those be?
Mr.
Rosloznik. I have trouble with that too.
Thank you. My apologies. I wish I could speak to the gentleman, but our languages don't mix. Yes. You would also find in there possibly things on the environment, things on the social aspects of the operation.
The finances would be there too?
The finances would be part of the feasibility study.
But it's not an, okay, so there would be part of the feasibility study. And if there are any documents developed after the feasibility study, would you expect to find those in the bundle as well? Technical documents?
I guess so. The feasibility study is a mark in time. If it was, but the feasibility study, after it's 2 years, you would actually have a renewal of your feasibility study. So I wouldn't actually expect add-ons ad hoc put in. Your feasibility study is your leading document, and other aspects are put in. For example, the competent persons report. You could have more than one competent persons report, and equally the investors normally ask for their own competent persons report or NI 4103. So you would have, the investor would carry out his own study, which is, for example, the case with the report we're looking at. It's, as you highlighted, it's DEG who paid for it.
Okay. And would it be, in your experience, if have you advised investors seeking to invest
Yes.
in? Okay. So if you're faced with a bundle, and is it accurate to describe that as an investor due diligence binder, so to speak?
No. You, as an investor, you ask for specific items. I would look for, for example, the owners' shareholders' reports. I would look for feasibility studies if there were, or if there was other studies.
And you would put all these in that bundle?
I would put these in any. If I'm looking to make the investment, there's certain. It depends if I've carried in investments for a bank, for example. Banks would not be interested in seeing, for example, the environmental, social, because they do not pick up these responsibilities they're looking to. But if you're going to be the buyer, you would be interested in these things because you would be buying these
You'd be acquiring the risks.
So you would be buying these. So there's a slight difference whether if you're an investor to a business where you don't take the responsibilities. So the direction for who is required for this. Some investors purely would like to see the quality and the recoveries, and almost nothing else. The finances they will work out themselves, because they will look at the quality of the product and the capability, and that's it. And that's not in 1999. This is in 2016.
Okay, understood. And if you were advising an investor, would you ask for the Pope?
Would I ask for it? No, I wouldn't ask for it, because the conditions of operating there, you will go there and see it. If you're investing in the business, you will look at the different licenses they have, which are then awarded based on the Pope. So if you have the operating licenses, that's what I'd want to see.
Okay.
So the license to operate, or you have the license to operate crudely. There's lots of little licenses that are fringe licenses for water extraction, for example. These are, as an investor, the noise, but you need your operator's license and the license of the deposit, to hold the license of the deposit.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you would like to see a feasibility study that's no more than 2 years old.
Yes.
Okay. And if you're faced with a situation where you have an older feasibility study, what would you do?
If it's 20 years old, then I wouldn't even read it.
If it's more than 2 years old?
If it's more than two, If it's 20 years, I wouldn't read it, but 2 years, if it's 3 or 4 years, I would certainly read it. But then I would look and work with it, but I would certainly have a competent person's report carried out to support it, or not. To
What
review
if
it.
it's 5 years old?
Exactly the same.
6?
The same. It depends on what I'm looking at. If it's a gold deposit, I wouldn't take any latitude in it at all. I would want it redone. If it's an industrial mineral deposit, then I would be looking at the tons and the quality. These things do not change substantially. If there's additional drilling, I would want the additional drilling included. If there's no additional drilling, then I would be quite comfortable with the old report.
Okay. Now, the feasibility study in this project is dated 1998, right?
Yes,
And there was additional drilling afterwards.
yes,
Did you see a renewed or updated feasibility study?
no.
Okay. Sir, did you see an investor bundle in the documents that were provided to you?
An investor bundle.
That bundle that we were describing earlier?
All those elements were in there, not as a bundle, but the amount of different documents that I reviewed, from the Pope to the ARP to the development planning studies and the competent persons reports. So all the elements were in there. I was not. I had no requirement to review things for water extraction, environment, the fringe, what I would call. It's not the investors. I just looked at what the investors would have looked at.
And that, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused because you earlier said that investors would not see a Pope, but now you're telling me that you looked at the Pope.
Yes, it was there. If
Okay.
it wasn't there, I wouldn't have looked at it, and I wouldn't have asked for it if it wasn't there.
Okay.
I would have looked for the mining license and worked on the mining license. The Pope is an agreement between the operator and the government to work. So if a new operator or as things move, these would change.
Okay. And whose competent persons reports did you read?
The competent persons report, Mr. Roslitniker's reports I've reviewed there.
Okay. And what were their names? What's the title of them?
What you've got is there was a development study report, and I think it was on his name as well, which I read there.
Is that part of the Pope or is that?
No, it's not part of the Pope.
Okay.
It was year 2000. There was a mining development plan. I read these reports. So this is written by the competent persons. In the year 2000, they did a development plan, planning in what I call the horizontal adit, and they costed it out in the year 2000. This was in discussion. They would have this discussion with the authorities, but it was not included into the Pope because there was other ideas and until you firm up your idea, it will not enter into the Pope.
Okay, so you would only put it in the Pope when you firm up your ideas?
When you're actually going to do it, yes.
Okay.
You can have ideas and have interaction with the right authorities of what to do, how to do it, because you value their input on where you're going to go. You're not going to say, I'm doing this, and then the authority reject it. You are tabling your views of how to develop the business with the authorities. It's not a cold once every 2 years report. This is the authorities and the developer would have probably a very close relationship. And at the same time as in the year 2000, planning in to do the adit, they're also doing the ARPs, planning to do the flotation and carry out the flotation. These are not, both these things are not in the Pope.
Okay. You're aware that there was an amended Pope?
Yes, there's several popes.
There are two to be exact.
Two, yes. Yes, I've read two popes.
Well, two mining popes.
POTD, yes.
Two mining popes.
Yes, but this is not unusual. This would go on and on for the life of the mine.
Okay.
You just don't have one blueprint and that's it for life. Within those popes, what builds those popes is these other documents of, which is people's plans, basically. You know, it's for example, in one of the plans they were looking at mining magnesite, and this would enhance the deposit value considerably. So this is not in the Pope. It is certainly what VSK are doing now. So not only have you got a talc deposit, this talc deposit value is complemented by the value of magnesite.
Okay.
So this discussion, so in an industrial mineral deposit, you don't just base your resource estimate on the core item. In an industrial mineral deposit, you base your resource on all the minerals that are available, and you actually convert your resource estimate in some occasions to not just the raw mineral, but into what the process mineral would be. So, and this is in your Christos code, the industrial mineral element, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So your industrial mineral resource, if you stick to the code, would have to define the value of the deposit, not just of the talc, but also of magnesite, which is of a similar value and similar quantity as the talc. This is not quantified in any of these reports, but it is quantified in these documents that they've looked at. We've got magnesite, let's look at it later. But the magnesite volume there is there. BSK now are introducing it to their business when the process plant comes in. So this magnesite would double the value of the deposit and equally half the risk of the resource. It's not just magnesite, you've also got in there cassiterite. So there's byproducts. Now this is captured into the resource estimate for an industrial mineral.
And these were all developed by ARP, right?
No, the magnesite, these comments have come through in the experts on the site. They have brought in the identification of the magnesite. The ARP did no study on magnesite. This was not progressed during Rosman's time, but it was, why I was giving you is the relationship to a industrial mineral resource estimate under Crisco code, because under an industrial mineral estimate, you capture all the package, not just one, as part of your resource. And if I was an investor, I would look for the whole package of products. That de-risks your value of your deposit. So not only have you got talc there, you've also got a byproduct of cassiterite. In today's market, this will give them a good return.
Now, with all of this, I would find in the Pope.
No, it wouldn't. When the new Pope today would have this in it.
But not back then.
Back then they didn't, but they had it in their documents back then.
Why it wasn't in the Pope back then?
Because they were focusing on talc. There is absolutely no value to include it back there. But within their resource estimate, as this was developed, this would have been included into the resource estimate going forward.
Okay.
I think there's possibly a misunderstanding between resource values of a metal and a resource estimate for an industrial mineral.
I don't have a misunderstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any?
No, I'm sorry, I apologize. I said I don't have any misunderstanding to him. I have a couple more topics, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't mean to imply that I was done. I won't be more than 30 minutes, Mr. President.
Perfect.
Now, Mr. Hill, so just to summarize, see if I understand correctly, you would have the Pope want to be your more up-to-date current plan with the most up-to-date current information on the technical issues pertaining to the plan, specifically focused on I don't know if I want to use the word opening or, you know, something to that effect.
Who-
The mining or, you know.
Okay, would I want, who would want, who am I asking for that? Am I the investor? Am I the operator? Am I
You're the expert,
government?
sir.
As the expert, I would want, no, I wouldn't want the Pope. The Pope is just another document.
No, I'm sorry, I may have phrased my question poorly. I'm just trying to summarize, see if I understand your
Mhm.
testimony, that you want the Pope to be the most current document for purposes of exploiting from a technical perspective this, a mine.
As an expert, I would look to the license. The Pope is almost background reading because it's obsolete on publication. Because on publication, things have moved on so fast, as with, you pointed out, the amendment. But what is important is where the business is, the stepping stones are, and where it's going. That's more important. The Pope is the contract with the government, is legally binding. But an operation works faster than bureaucracy.
Understand, so prospectively, it would become obsolete, but retrospectively, it would include everything you've done to the date of the
No,
Pope.
it would not include everything you've done. Everything you've done certainly wouldn't be in there. What's in there is what you are going to do as agreed with the government.
Okay.
Because what you've done, your ideas would not all be in there because ideas may not be formulated. For example, the adit, which is well covered in the mining development plan, it was covered and costed, but it was not complete.
Now, okay, I'm going to be a little bit more indirect. The findings of the Claude Hopper report, which you have
Yes.
described as very positive conclusions, you would expect to find those in the Pope.
No, but in the Pope is how you operate. This is, the club offer is the value of your business. This is a different, the Pope is an operating document. It can be in there, but it's not essential. It's how you actually operate the business with the government.
But if the Pope touches upon the value, then you would expect the Claude Hopper to be included there.
The Pope wouldn't touch on the value. It's an operating document. It may put, the government may ask for things to be put in there, but as an operator, what the Pope is, it's demonstrating how you're going to operate your business. It's almost not, it is the government's business to see what you mine, but the government, they will get that information through your financials and your operating reports, not through the Pope.
Okay. Just Mr. President, if I may, I'd like for 5 minutes break. So I think I'm done, but I'd like to organize my thoughts before I conclude.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I, excuse me, is it okay if I leave the seat and go to the toilet?
Yes, of course.
Sorry, everybody else is sitting looking serious. I might look more comfortable after that.
Yes, hi,
Any
Mr.
other?
President. I don't have any more questions for Mr. Hill.
Okay, very good. We direct. Yeah, I might have a microphone.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I might have just a couple questions as well. Mr. Hill, you were just asked.
Maybe the microphone closer to you.
Is that better? Yes. Mr. Hill, you were just asked whether the findings of the Clubhouse study were integrated in the POPD.
Mhm.
Can I just ask you to follow me to tab 51?
Oh, sorry. We didn't realize that.
The cross reporter.
So quiet.
So. We had started without you.
We cannot stop him.
We have.
So, Mr. Hill, as I was saying, you were just asked by opposing counsel whether the findings of the Clubhouse study were integrated in the POPD, the new POPD. So if I could just ask you to follow me to tab 51 of the bundle we have in front of you, which should be the first POPD that was submitted in 1998, and to turn to page 21 of that document. And just read the first two paragraphs, especially the last sentence of the second paragraph. For the tribunal, I'll just read it out loud. It reads, it's a paragraph that describes, it's called the distribution of reserves according to excavation preparedness. And it goes on to describe the reserve or resource. And it concludes by saying that the volume and quality characteristics of reserves for mining outputs, full stop, these are calculated on.
Sorry, could you say which page, which?
21 of tab 51, which is
Page 21?
Yeah.
Is this section 1.1.5? Sorry for that.
No, just above, the paragraph just above.
Right.
And the last sentence,
Mhm.
talking about the reserve or resource, says that these are calculated on 900,000 roughly, with a tau content of 40%.
Yes. Okay.
Keeping this information in mind, if you follow me now to tab 58.
Would you give the exhibit reference?
Yeah, tab 58 is exhibit C 230. And this is the updated version of what we call it POPD, but just to stay consistent, I'll call it the POP. And it's the same section as in the previous one. And could you read the last paragraph and tell us if it seems that it's been updated compared with what we just read in the previous POPD? And it's
This is on page.
well, it's not paginated, so it's difficult to give you a page number, but if you go to section 1.1.4 of that document, section 1.1.4, it's ninth page. I think you're there.
1.1.
0.4.
1.1.4.
Yeah, the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Especially the last sentence, which reads, simultaneously it will allow recalculation of the volume and qualitative characteristics of reserves for extraction, which after completion by new boreholes are also calculated in the above mentioned defined western section of the deposit at 1.4 kiloton of tau.
Yes, I see this is certainly updated, not only in the tonnage, but also the quality. So this update actually over doubles the volume of talc. I'm sorry, yes, I completely forgot it when I was talking earlier, my apologies.
And with this new information, would you like to comment further on the questions that my learned colleague asked you?
Yeah, this sort of thing is not necessarily usually in what included in a poke, but the definition in here between the two, it's an update on the information. It is categorized it as an indicated deposit with 1.4 million tons with greater than 60% talc of talc. So the two reports have, over the space of time with this additional drilling, is actually captured the higher volume of tons within this small zone.
And just to clarify this update and new information, is it consistent with the findings of the Kohlenpuffer study?
It's exactly the same number as the Kohlenpuffer study.
I'd just like to pick up on a comment you made earlier. I think you suggested that with metals such as gold, you would have much more stringent requirements than with industrial minerals such as talc. I just wanted to know if you could expand on this different approach for the benefit of the tribunal.
It's quite standard within all the codes. It's not just one code fits all. Each code is broken down, and Chris code and also PERC, which is actually prevalent to Europe, and the JORC code, which is looked on as the blue chip code, which everybody else follows. All of these codes break down. The premise of being a resource and a reserve doesn't change, but how you get there does change. And for a metal, it's quite clear. Then there is certain latitude, shall we say, when you come to an industrial mineral, because you just cannot take the tons and the value. With metals, it's tons and value, crudely, but with a mineral, an industrial mineral, it's quite different. You actually have to bring in other parameters, because an industrial mineral, in its face value, a ton of rock is worth next to nothing. So with industrial minerals, a lot of industrial minerals are actually, their resources and reserves are actually based on their final product, what they make. And you can enhance through engineering and processing an industrial mineral, and it can be worth a massive amount of money. But actually, in the ground, it's almost worthless. And you, as a mined product, and this is clear that a ton of rock, a ton of talc isn't much worth more than 100 euros, 150 euros, depending on the quality. Where an ounce of gold is $1,340. So, and you'll get in a ton of rock, you could get 5 ounces of gold in it. So the work required to give you the confidence is very different. So all the minerals have their category, industrial minerals have their category. There is a very different category for diamonds, which I'm not too familiar with, but the diamonds, there is several different ways diamonds are formed. So their code is more about the formation of diamonds to give the confidence. And there's also a different code on coal, and there's also a different code for what we'd say aggregates and construction material. So these codes, to come back to the one that we're on, is the talc in industrial mineral. Industrial minerals, crudely, the mining of mining of industrial minerals is not too different the world over for different mineral to mineral, whether it's an open pit operation, which is most industrial minerals, which is the cheaper way. When you go underground, you will have extra cost, much greater cost, to mine underground, you would go from an open pit cost of maybe $20 to underground, you've got $80. So your costs are different, but in making your mineral resource, you would take into account things such as the end product. You'd also take into account how you would bag it, how you would actually handle it. You'd also take into account who are your end customers. It's very nice to make talc and think my best customer is in America, but your transport costs would inhibit the product of making a profit. Where if you mine gold and transport it to America, of course it will make a profit. So you've got to take other allocations into an industrial mineral. When you put a reserve on an industrial mineral, you just don't look at the one product that you're mining. A lot of industrial minerals have byproducts, such as aggregates. So you would mine your product, and as a spin-off industry, you would have roadstone, you would have cement product, you would have a byproduct which would add value to that business. You'd also have, in this case, byproducts of actually metals. And this byproduct of tin, it doesn't all happen on day one because it needs to be developed. But within that area here, when this business started on this deposit, they were actually exploring for tin. And there's an extensive drilling program where they were exploring for tin. This is why a lot of the holes are showing no talc, but in fact they're showing tin. And it's only that when they found suddenly that they weren't finding the tin volumes that they're hoping for, they actually started to find talc in there. They didn't go mining there for talc. It's a byproduct from tin. It's quite an interesting history in that region. But the actual resource will then have quite a lot of add-ons purely for industrial minerals. This is not the case for metal mining. You cannot make add-ons. If you mine the metal, say gold, you can't say I have a roadstone business as well. This is, you just can only put it into the reserve as the metal. Is that correct?
I think you've expanded beyond everyone's expectations.
Oh, I haven't started.
That was their interest.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, just one question. Mr. Hill, the estimate of tonnage, it would be subject to verification or recalculation after you actually access through the underground and you do the mapping, correct?
I'm sorry, it's just remaking the point.
No, it's a question. I just want to know if he agrees with that or not. If it's subject to recalculation after.
It's not subject to recalculation because in that position, that 1.4 million tons has moved to indicated. When you go underground, what you would move it to is a measured resource. And normally, if you have an inferred resource, you can guarantee 99% that this will move to indicated, the whole lot will move. So your inferred resource, although they've only isolated that small area, the actual inferred resource is showing over 200 million tons of inferred. Now, so this whole 200 million tons of inferred is guaranteed to be moved to indicated once you start mining.
Guaranteed?
Almost guaranteed. It's
Almost or guaranteed?
It's guaranteed. It's even if you look in your Christos code, there's a line in there which, if I can find, I will. If you could direct me to where your Christos code is to give the right wording. What page is the 54?
No,
If you
yeah.
bear with me for a second. Yes, it is reasonably expected that the majority of an inferred mineral resource could be upgraded to an indicated resource. That's what's written in the code.
Okay.
I may apologise for using the wrong word, guaranteed, but reasonably expected. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but that's reasonably expected in it. It also puts in that an inferred resource is a resource that has geological evidence is sufficient to imply but not verify geological grade and quality. So when you say it's upgraded, of course it's always upgraded as you move down the chain. That chart isn't a layer of good to bad. That chart is a map of how you bring a deposit into business. And all this work has to be carried out by a competent person. You cannot, these decisions and discussion, as it also implies in here, under Christos, which I have not picked up in JORC. In the Christos code, it says you must be a competent person in the product that you're working with. In this case, it's hydrothermal intrusions and in the mining of talc. And they actually put in that there is a clause in here that this is not followed by having the competent person with the right qualifications, then it must be reported. So I'd just like to point out, I am actually covered under a competent person to comment on this talc deposit.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to draw your attention, sir, to the...
We're moving beyond this
No,
question.
he is talking a lot, but I'm on your point on the tonnage. I'd like, sir, for you to go to tab 58, which is the POPE that council was just showing you, POPE 2. I want you to go to page 18 of that POPE. They're not numbered, unfortunately. It'll be section 1.1.4. Sorry? The exhibit number is C230. But if you count the pages, you count 18 and you're going to get to it.
Is it that page?
1.4? 1.14.
1.4, my apologies.
Yes, that's the page.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like you to go to the second paragraph. Let me wait, see if the tribunal's there. Yes, I'd like you to go to the second paragraph under section 1.14. It starts with here, and I'll read it to you. Here, it should be stated that the actual deposit was only verified in the research exploration phase. Another more detailed verification phase was not implemented. And then I go to the next paragraph. For the reason above, spatial and qualitative complete verification is expected from the implemented mining works by means of mining and drilling work. This work will clarify the location of the proposed mining and extraction work. Simultaneously, it will allow recalculation of the volume and qualitative characteristics of the reserve for extraction. So the Pope itself, and this is a question that I have, the Pope itself envisioned the possibility that their estimate of volume and quality would be subject to change upon further exploration, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hill, for your explanations. So your examination is completed. Now we'll have Mr. Sparks. We can call him now.
Yes, John, if you don't mind, following Alex Hill's testimony, I think I'd like to gather my thought. I think I can reduce a lot of my questions so as to gain time. But if you could maybe break for 15 minutes, I think after that I'd be able to finish within half an hour, 45 minutes.
So,
Do you want to break?
You want to break?
break now?
I didn't hear.
15 minutes, just a break, and then afterwards I hope I'll be
A
able to
break
finish.
of
15 minutes?
50 minutes, okay. So at a quarter to 10, 11. Quarter to 10, 11, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No
morning, Mr. Sparks. Yes, please. Microphone. Both. Yes.
Good morning.
So you're appearing here as an expert witness. Can you read the expert declaration which is in front of you, please?
I solemnly declare upon my honor and conscience that my statement will be in accordance with my sincere belief.
Thank you. Direct.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Sparks. My name is Daniel Foy. I'm acting as counsel for Belmont. And I'll just ask you a couple questions on the 2 reports you submitted in this arbitration. Just as a matter of curiosity, can we just start by looking at your CV, which is at the end, appendix C to your first report. I'm not going to challenge your qualifications, because I don't really have to choose to do it. But I do see that in your foreign consulting experience, you list in the last position Slovakia.
Yes.
Is that due to your involvement in this arbitration, or
In part, yes.
in part?
Yes.
What's just a part?
I also looked at another property in Slovakia.
When?
Approximately the same time that I viewed the Gamerska Paloma deposit.
Acting for the government, or?
No, this was a totally separate matter.
Interesting coincidence. Alright. So as I understand it, you've been able to attend the whole hearing, correct?
Yes.
And prior to that, what documents have you been able to review in preparation of your reports? Have you reviewed the pleading?
I've reviewed the pleadings, and I've reviewed at least some of the pertinent exhibits.
All right. And have you looked at the witness statements
Yes, some of the witness statements.
from both sides?
I do not recall seeing or noticing the difference, but I did see Dr. Roslaznik's witness statement, and I don't recall seeing others. Perhaps Heidecker's.
Hikers.
Yes.
And I understand you've been lucky enough to do a site visit.
Yes, I have.
Was it 1, 2?
Days, you mean?
No, visits.
Oh, one visit.
1 visit.
Yeah.
Was it organized by the government, or did you contact VSK Mining directly?
It was organized by the government.
Organized by the government?
Yes.
And VSK Mining welcomed you with open arms?
They were, I'm sorry.
VSK Mining welcomed you with open arms?
Yes, they appeared so.
Can you just remind me, who are the people you talked to during that visit, or people who are not involved in the project, to get some knowledge on the deposit, its history, its current status?
I spoke with Mr. Chore, and I spoke with the mine manager and the chief geologist at VSK, and I spoke with Mr. Heidecker.
Right. At the time, they were all employees of VSK Mining, correct?
I don't think Chore was.
Sure he wasn't anymore.
I do not think so.
Turning to the substance of your reports, can we look at paragraph 17 and 18 of your second report?
Yes?
So in the second sentence of paragraph 17, Well, I'll just read the first two sentences. The Heidegger study is comprehensive but brief, containing little supporting data. Perhaps this is explained by the title Paloma Feasibility Study Outline. There are several suggestions in the text that the Heidegger Feasibility Study Outline that the study was at most a pre-feasibility study as defined under international standards.
Yes.
My question is, did you qualify this document as a pre-feasibility study as per international standards today, or international standards at the time?
I would say, certainly I looked at international standards of today, but fundamentally, the standards are separate and apart from good mining practice. Project development is a continuum, beginning with very early information and continuing through production, and that continuum involves de-risking along the way. So that's it in a nutshell. My principal guidance was, I would say, good mining practice, setting aside current standards.
No, but what I'm trying to understand is my understanding, based on what I've heard, been told, is that the way you classify a deposit as a reserve or resource, and the different level of confidence that you place into it, inferred, measured, changes or has changed quite significantly over time, so that something that could have been classified as a feasibility study in the 90s today would be considered a pre-feasibility study, or not even that, and that sometimes a resource would have been classified as a resource in the 90s or early 2000, and today would reserve and today would be classified as a resource. Isn't that correct?
Not entirely, no. I'm bifurcating the current standards or standards in general from ordinary care for this good mining practice, which has been around for as long as mining's been around.
All right, so you maintain that you qualify the feasibility study, the Heidegger feasibility study, as a pre-feasibility study,
In the current vernacular.
but at the time, there's a chance it would have been perceived as a proper feasibility study.
I think not.
Then paragraph 18, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you still conclude by saying both statements, quoting the two statements above, both statements are powerful reminders that more work was required before the body of work could be qualified as a feasibility.
Sorry, when you read,
Sorry,
let's read more slowly, because if not, it will not be on the transcript.
I apologize. So it's the paragraph above 19, which reads, both statements are, and it's quoting statements in the so-called Hansa-Geomin study. Both statements are powerful reminders that more work was required before the body of work could be qualified as a feasibility study under international standards.
Yes.
So again, you qualify the conclusions of the Hansa-Geomin study, I'm assuming based on your previous answer, on today's standards mixed with what was good practice throughout the past 15 years?
Well, the explanation is, I believe, straightforward in the sense that good mining practice is independent from today's standards or yesterday's standards. I chose to use today's standards just for a common reference point.
Right, but it just feels a bit artificial, because I'm assuming the standards that were applicable or recognized or relied upon by investors in 2000 when those studies were conducted are still available, and they would have been maybe a bit more fair to make that assessment on those standards, those contemporaneous standards.
In 2000, I do not believe that is the case.
Understood. And then in paragraph 19, I do take notes of the fact that you say, however, for the reasons given in paragraph 3A above, notwithstanding completion of 6 additional boreholes, development failed to achieve anything more than inferred resources. So you accept that it is at the very least inferred resources,
Yes, I do.
and inferred resources, this time, I'm assuming that you're referring to today's standards.
Today's standards, but that's been around since, again, before the date of this analysis.
And the definition of inferred resources has not changed over the past decade?
Not-
It's more than that, it's 15 years now.
Not particularly, but even harking back to the classification as C3 or Z3 under the former Russian standards, the meaning is essentially the same. It's unchanged.
Right, but you don't make a distinction between, say, the mining area and the extraction area, as Alex Hill has done to show that at least in this small portion, the level of confidence has at the very least been increased.
I was broadly including the extraction area as well as the entire mineralized body. And by that I mean, at best, the resource was amounted to only inferred in the extraction area. I was taking that collectively.
But correct me if I'm wrong, or that would mean that Alex is wrong too. It would have been possible to make your assessment based on the whole mining area or western area of the deposit, and then to see if the level of confidence had been materially increased in that specific extraction area.
The level of confidence in the specific extraction area, in my opinion, did not rise above inferred resource.
All right, but without necessarily going into this, don't you think it would have been fair to distinguish between the two, which you haven't done throughout the report?
Perhaps it's just the way it's being read, but my intention in drafting in this fashion was that there was nothing that surpassed inferred resource in any portion of the deposit.
As per today's standards.
Yeah. Or as indicated previously in my previous comment, under Z3 Slovak standards, as indicated in several of the documents that I reviewed.
Can we quickly go over the so-called Hansa Geoman report, which for convenience I'll refer to it as the DG report. It says 10 of the first bundle. Is that the opening bundle? No, not the opening bundle. Actually, it's been convenient for the moment and throughout those cross-examination questions to use respondents' witness bundles.
Can you read the reference?
Yeah, the 10 exhibit C137.
I'm not finding, is this the correct bundle or is this the correct bundle?
It's no, it's still one.
There appears to be nothing in my tab 10.
Are you using
Oh,
it?
sorry.
Yeah, I'm using it.
Oh, then it'll be, what is it, the DEG code
Yeah.
offer?
Yeah.
Oh, Hansa Geoman, it'll be tab 10 of our volume 1.
I'm seeing something different in under tab 10. The Hansa Geoman.
Tab
10 of 154.
Oliver, it was 10 of volume 1, divided with. No, of the, we're using the Mr. Hill. Remember? The one that was open?
familiar with that document.
Yes, I am.
Could you tell us, without going into the substance of it just yet, the background on this document?
This was a review of the Heidecker feasibility outline, which was performed in connection with DEG potential financing, a due diligence effort, if you will.
That is correct. I'm just going to read the paragraph that explains this for the benefit of the tribunal. It's at page 7. It reads that, I'll just call it DG. The DG has been asked by the promoters of the project to examine the financing of the investment in Gemerska Paloma. In this context, DG has contracted Hansa Geoman Consult in Germany as consultant to analyze and evaluate the feasibility study. Can you tell us who DG is?
It's my understanding it's a German state investment bank, similar to the IDRB, for lack of a better way to describe it.
That's accurate. So, both these institutions are pretty serious.
Yes.
And both of these institutions visibly considered the feasibility study that to be rather comprehensive and reliable, sufficiently at least to support or recommend going into the project and funding the project.
I wouldn't characterize it quite the same way. I believe the Hansa Geoman report found the Heidecker report to be complete with respect to the level of report that it represented. And there are several references throughout the Hansa Geoman that suggest that that is the case. But they did, in fact, confirm the basic findings of the Heidecker feasibility outline.
Right. So we have an independent third party that was hired to review a feasibility study for an interested state-owned investor who confirms the reliability of the feasibility study.
At the stage that it was presented.
Right. Which still shows, wouldn't you agree that it still shows that this document, at least at the time in '98, was rather reliable, and neither DG nor Hansa Geoman ever put in question the fact that the feasibility study was a proper feasibility study?
No, I don't reach that conclusion. It's I'm not sure what you mean by a proper feasibility study, but preliminary assessment or preliminary analysis, as suggested by the Heidecker title, which is feasibility study outline, which is not normally found on a comprehensive study.
But what's produced in this arbitration is the outline, but there's the actual feasibility study. You have not reviewed this document?
I've reviewed the feasibility study outline. That's the only thing I've seen.
Did you request the feasibility study?
I believe, as I recall, it's been some time, but that was the only document available.
What if I told you that counsel for respondent made a document request for the feasibility study? It was produced in the large majority of it. There was only one part that couldn't be found, and you weren't provided a copy with it.
What's your record reference?
Or at least you didn't object to the fact that we didn't produce.
So is it in the record or is it not in the record?
It's not in the record. I'm just asking if he asked to see a copy at least.
If it's not in the record, Mr. Chairman, I'd raise an objection that you can't ask the witness questions about a document that's not in the record.
I'm not asking, if I may, I'm not asking questions about what's in the document. I'm asking if he reviewed or asked to review the document.
Yes, I think that's a fair question.
The document that was reviewed in Hansa Geomin is a document that I was provided, which is entitled Feasibility Study Outline.
I'll take that answer. All right, before I move to my next topic, you told us early on that you have met with Mr. Chori.
Correct, yes.
What were your impressions regarding his qualifications?
That he appeared to be a competent mining engineer. Obviously, we have a language barrier between us. I was provided with an interpreter, so I was able to question him, and assuming that the interpretation was reasonably accurate. What he told me in the course of a couple of hours at the site of the decline portal, was consistent with what I would believe to be a qualified mining engineer.
For this, so, and it will become relevant. As I understand it, your main critic for Cayman's failure to de-risk the deposit is the fact that the additional 6 boreholes that they carried out since taking over Rosman did not bring any additional value. Correct?
Certainly there was some value added, but I don't think it materially de-risked the deposit. And that's really based on 2 facts. First of all, there is a separation between the confirmation or the increased confidence in the available resource. I don't think that materially changed. And secondly, with respect to the economic analysis, that hasn't changed since the Heidecker feasibility outline that I'm aware of. So if I could expand on the additional 6 drill holes, they were not drilled in a manner consistent with what I would consider to be ordinary good practice in the mining industry. The holes, excuse me, well, some of them were twinned, or one was twinned, I believe, and 2 of them.
Could you just explain what twin means?
Twinned means drilled adjacent to a hole of a previously existing hole, presumably to confirm data, and as well to collect samples, which is quite legitimate and frequently done as a matter of routine, to do metallurgical testing. So 2 of those holes were actually in very close proximity, but they were done for different purposes. And secondly, the orientation of the holes was really quite different. Ordinarily, one would expect drill holes to be lined up in what's considered a fence or a fan, so that the holes all present on a cross section. But if you'll look at page 7 of my rebuttal report, you'll see that the holes have a variety of different orientations, and none of them appear on section. In other words, line up in a manner that a cross-section can be drawn without significant projection of data over great distances. So that's point 1. Point 2, there was a lot of data that was not collected. For example, the spatial location of the actual talc intercepts was apparently not determined. Typically, what's done is a downhole borehole survey, in other words, to determine where the actual talc intercept lies, because in deep drilling, particularly in soft rocks such as this, drill holes wander considerably away from their dip and their azimuth. And it's standard practice to survey all drill holes when doing resource development drilling. And this didn't qualify in that regard. There were a number of other deficiencies that I thought were in the data. There was no mention of, apparent mention anyway, of chemical, excuse me, chemical alteration, which is important in determining continuity as one measure. Another point was there was no indication of tectonic logs, in other words, faults that may have been observed in the drill core. Those are just a few examples, but in short, I don't think those extra 6 drill holes resulted in material de-risking.
All right, well, actually I was asking that question. I don't think we have the time to go into that level of detail on this issue. The reason I was asking you this really is because in your executive summary, you go over this failure for over 3 paragraphs, and you conclude, not really conclude, but what you draw from it is at paragraph 8 of the second report, where you say, this departure from industry standards operating procedure calls into question whether the geologists who drilled the 6 additional holes understood this basic tenet. And if they did, whether they intentionally ignored routine procedure and simply tried to target big talc intercepts without regard to development of the critical data.
Yes.
That's a rather harsh comment.
I have no knowledge of whether, which one was the situation.
But then I want to ask you, do you know who designed and undertook those drill holes?
I do not.
Can someone take you to the second paragraph of the witness statement of Mr. Chori? 25th paragraph.
So it's here.
I think so.
Not sure.
We can provide you a copy.
Yes, we have hydrocarbon.
Can we? Yeah. It's going to be a little smaller.
Which paragraph?
25.
25. Yeah.
And I'd like to draw your attention in particular to that last sentence of paragraph 25. And again, I remind you of the witness statement of Mr. Chori, where he says, I designed these boreholes, referring to the 6 boreholes you criticized. I designed these boreholes in person and then managed their realization.
Hmm.
That's new information to you.
I'm not sure what designed means, if he cited them in terms of location and azimuth, or I just have no way to know.
does seem to take somewhat some pride in this witness statement.
I'm not sure how I
If
could
you
comment.
read the entire paragraph, he's not even talking about the cooperation with claimants, although that happened when claimants arrived and they funded to a large extent that additional drilling. This is in the section where it's talking about the cooperation with Dorfner and the original shareholders in Rosman and their efforts to explore the deposits. There's really no reason to doubt that when he says, which I submit to you is some pride, that he designed these boreholes in person, and then managed their realization. There's no reason to doubt that he's going to have done it.
Perhaps he did.
And if that's the case, what I want to ask you is, who is in the wrong? Is it Mr. Chori for having done those boreholes? If, according to you, the added value is close to minimal, or is it you because those additional boreholes did allow to enhance the confidence in at least the extraction area?
Well, I stand by my statement. I don't think they were drilled in accordance, or the data collected was in accordance with good mining practice. There was much more data that could have been collected from those boreholes that would have assisted with developing higher confidence. However, that said, the location and the azimuth and dip of those drill holes did not line up on any sections, and thereby reduces the benefit.
And I'm not addressing those criticisms at that time, and they're not admitted, but I just wanted to get your opinion on
Sure.
this particular point.
Yeah.
I will have to take Mr. Chori's defense on one point, is the drilling of drill hole number 45, which I understand to have been a large multi-ton drilling that allowed then the ARP studies to be carried out.
That I don't have a problem with.
Right. No, and I notice, I do notice, because you barely mention those studies in your report.
Well, I think in order of events, the deposit has to first be verified before it's terribly meaningful to do metallurgical testing. I mean, that's further down the road. And I had these additional drill holes along with the metallurgical test hole been designed a bit differently and more data collected, I could easily have accepted that the project had been somewhat de-risked.
I don't think I'm going to get you to admit during this hour that we de-risked the project. So I'm just trying to get you to acknowledge the extent to which we did at least increase the level of confidence in the deposit and the interest in opening that deposit for potential investors. And just to pick up on that point and to explain why I find that particularly surprising that you did not or barely comment on the ARP studies, I'd like to take you to the Crisco standards, which you rely on in your report, which are tab 54. And that's today's standards, so not the ones at the time.
54?
Yeah, 54, and it exhibits R139.
Yeah.
I'm just picking up on what Alex Hale explained this morning, that the reporting of industrial mineral exploration results is not the same as for metals.
Understood and agreed.
And based on his opinion this morning, he explained that in the case of industrial minerals, there's a much more care or attention or focus is made to the quality of the product and the likely product specification.
That I agree with.
and I think that is confirmed if you look at page 23 of this document. The last full paragraph on that page, where it says that when reporting information and estimates for industrial minerals, the key principle and purpose of the template apply and should be borne in mind. Essays may not always be relevant, and other quality criteria may become more applicable. And if we turn to the next page, where I think they explain those quality criteria, it says, it may be necessary prior to reporting of a mineral resource or mineral reserve to take particular account of certain key characteristics or qualities such as likely product specification, proximity to market, and general product marketability. So keeping that in mind, don't you think that the ARB studies, which determine the quality of the talc that would be extracted, how to best process it to achieve the best talc in the best proportion according to the different markets, which I think you don't dispute.
No, I do not.
But then that would be, based on what I read here, that would be relevant to determine in the reporting of industrial mineral exploration results. And that's why I have trouble understanding how you cannot comment on those studies and at least acknowledge that it was a step, a good step, a step in the good direction, right direction.
Until a resource is reasonably proven, or let me rephrase that, until a resource is reasonably demonstrated to exist in a grade and tonnage, you know, those subsequent items are incidental.
Right, but if I read your report as a whole, you seem to say that we will not be able to increase the level of confidence without going on the ground. And we need to increase the level of confidence to secure financing to go on the ground. So it seems like we're going in a vicious circle we cannot get out of.
Well, I think, you know, harking back to the points that I made earlier about the orientation of the drill holes and the data collected, could have dramatically improved.
Right.
So that's the rub right there.
Maybe that's something else Clemens can blame Mr. Chorley for, that we can still acknowledge that there were efforts that were in the right direction. And
yeah,
there were some results, and you acknowledge yourself that the ARP study had value, was
Indeed.
reliable. And
Indeed, yes.
Thank you. I have just two last topics. They're much more practical. If we look at the last paragraph of your second report, I'll read it out loud.
That is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though it is evident that Rosman failed to open and excavate the deposits, the key question
Not
is...
too fast, not too fast.
Sorry. Though it is evident that Rosman failed to open and excavate the deposits, the key question is why, given an elapsed time of 6 years from the initial POPE submittal to termination of Rosman's rights to the property. That's what I'd like to emphasize. Perhaps there may have been additional compounding reasons as well, but in my opinion, Rosman's fundamental failure to take action, blah, 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 financing. But you're lucky enough to have been here all week during this hearing to hear all the evidence that's been presented. And based on that evidence, the evidence that's been presented, not necessarily demonstrated, but we submit to you that that's our case, that there were issues with the contractor, that there were issues with the permits, but that once we got the authorization, let's got the contractor, we paid the $4 million down payment. Does any of this has any of this information changed your opinion that maybe one of the reasons that may have been serious other reasons that prevented us from opening the deposit earlier, other than financing reasons?
There may have been contributing factors, but I think that, in my opinion, is the fundamental reason. And the fundamental reason is because the project had not been de-risked to a level that permitted reasonable banking and other financing institutions to get comfortable with it.
That's where I have a bit of an issue with that comment, because if you were to give your expert opinion and say, no, the project was not de-risked, so they would have had trouble to get financing, that's one thing. We would challenge it, but it would be one thing. But to say that, in your expert opinion, that was the fundamental reason, as if there could not have been other factors, I mean, that goes beyond your scope. Did you look into the finances of Rosmin? Did you look into the finances of its shareholders to see if they could have got financing? There's 1,000 different factors that could have affected the conclusion that you've just stated out loud, that the fundamental reason we did not open the deposit over 6 years was because we hadn't de-risked the deposit. You can see my point now.
Well, I disagree with your point, but I will admit to there being contributing factors, but certainly the point that I make here in this paragraph 33 is, in my opinion, because the project was not sufficiently de-risked, Rosman was unable to attract financing.
But then, so am I right to assume that you looked into those factors and you weighed the impact they had on our capacity to open the deposit?
Sure.
You did?
Yeah, well, I looked into them to the extent that I was furnished with exhibits and so forth, but I'm generally familiar with what it takes to finance a project, and I'm very familiar with the cost.
But did you look into the permitting issues that we at least allege? Did you look into the issues we had with the contractor?
I looked at the contractor issues, yes. The permitting issues, I wasn't privy to the information.
I'm impressed by your confidence. Okay, just one last topic. Since you know all this, you know that in '98, the two initial shareholders, who were rather important actors in the mining industry, bailed out.
Mm-hmm.
Then there wasn't much interest in the deposit, as demonstrated by the fact that Belmont was able to swoop in and buy the shares from those two shareholders without there being much of a competition. And you're also aware that in 2005, there was a bit of a rush to the tender procedure. The two largest producers of tap participated in that tender procedure. Mondo Minerals was so disappointed as a result, it filed a complaint. And then when the mining rights were assigned to a one-person company, this company was able to have no financing at the time of tender. This company was able to find an investor within a matter of months and start the works within 2 years, etc. So what I want to ask you is, what changed between then, if it's not the work we did? And because I know it's not the market conditions, to our greatest despair, our own expert has told us that the prices have not raised very significantly during that period. So it seems that in the course of 7 years, when there wasn't much interest in that deposit, at the end there was significant interest in the deposit. Can you see any other explanation other than the studies and additional boreholes that we've done?
I think I'm sorry, I'm going to have to object, Mr. President. I think the question goes outside his expertise and is asking the witness to opine on some factual issues outside of the technical aspects as to which he is testifying.
Well, if I may just clarify, I'm not asking him to confirm our allegation, and in answer to my question just before, he did opine and said that he had looked on the different issues that had prevented us from opening the deposit. So I think it's only fair to ask him if he can come up with any other determining factor that would have created such an appetite within the course of 7 years.
Okay.
There are a myriad of possibilities to which I am not privy. There's just, I don't have any way of knowing.
That concludes my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. John.
Thank you. We direct.
Just one second, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President, I have, just want to touch on follow up on a topic that Mr. Flott addressed, and, if I may. Mr. Sparks, in your conversation with Mr. Flott, you were asked about, what if I'm not mistaken, and if I am, please correct me, about what is required for de-risking, and or what are the steps that are necessary. I never answered that. There was a conversation about. Go ahead. Okay. I'd just like for you to explain to the tribunal, Mr. Sparks, if you can, whether you have experience advising potential investors on a industrial mine project. This is an industrial mine project.
And I take it you mean industrial minerals, but
Sorry.
yes, I have.
Well, can you please explain a little bit of your background for the tribunal's benefit?
In regard to advising financial investors, or I'm not quite sure what you mean.
I'm sorry, in advising investors.
Well, I can't even think of how many times I've been advised investors in the form of due diligence, in the form of deal structuring, in a way that would protect their interest, the investor's interest, that is. And this involves a variety of mineral commodities, including industrial minerals and metals. My role in this instance is as managing director of metals and industrial minerals for the John T. Boyd Company, international consulting firm.
Thank you. And, well, you advise investors, what are the kind of things that they're looking for in a mine of this type?
Well, I guess the most fundamental principle is having confidence in the resources, number one, and number two, having the ability, based upon economic analysis, definitive economic analysis, and that requires a whole cadre of things, such as clear definition of project scope to arrive at an estimate of costs and so forth, as well as mineral processing steps that would result in a saleable product. And then in the case of industrial minerals, such as talc, an assessment of the market. And as I believe was pointed out earlier, markets are, in industrial minerals, are quite different than they are for metals. They're generally transportation driven, and they're highly specification driven. So it's important to have that information before, as well as a lot of ancillary information, but those are the fundamentals before you can adequately advise a client about a potential investment.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. You had described earlier that it is your understanding that the holes were not drilled, the 6 holes we're talking about, that were included in the Klopp-Hoffer report and the Hansa Min report, were not drilled in a fan.
That's correct.
Can you please explain to us why would that be important if you were advising an investor?
Well, I think there are two parts to that. First, it's ideal that drill holes, exploration drill holes, be drilled essentially on section. If you can imagine a vertical section, and you would like to penetrate the ore body at various points within the same section. And that requires then an azimuth, a similar azimuth along a similar line. And that can be done either from a single drill setup, wherein you would actually literally fan the holes, or alternatively, the same azimuth along the same line. And what this does is facilitates development of a geologic section that is drawing, if you will, from drill hole to drill hole, from intercept to intercept, so that you can get a good sense of continuity, or a better sense of continuity. When holes are drilled not on a section, and when holes are drilled in a variety of different azimuths, different directions, it makes it very difficult and far, far less reliable to determine continuity, among other things.
Thank you. I'd like you to explain to us a little bit more the purpose and significance of the ARP studies, because I was a little confused as to how they relate to this fan drilling.
Well, they're really separate considerations. The fan drilling is aimed at defining a reliable resource. The large diameter drill holes, which provided product for testing in the ARP studies, as Mr. Foy pointed out, provided the opportunity to do some metallurgical testing to assess marketability, as well as cost and recovery of the product.
Okay, and so I get it that if I were to put it in layman's terms, and I apologize for doing that, because I know technical people don't like that, but if I were to put it in layman's terms, the ARP studies would not be able to quantify the reliability of the resource.
No, they're totally separate issues, yes. That is correct, they would not.
Okay, and is our investors, or in your experience when you're advising investors, are they looking to determine the reliability of the resource?
Oh, absolutely, that's a fundamental.
Okay, and what does it tell you, the fact that this was not done here, about whether this project was de-risked or not?
Well, as I previously explained, the fact that it was not sufficiently de-risked, not only through development of a reliable resource, but also the other components, the cost components, the capital cost components, the operating cost components, the definition of the development plan and the production plan, and the marketing, as has been pointed out, is of critical importance in determining economics of a industrial mineral.
President, I have no further questions.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sparks, this is the end of the examination. Thank you very much. It's 11:45. I suppose Mr. Anway and Mr. Yardi would be happy to come sometime, and it's also early for lunch. So what would you suggest? Certainly not before 1. But
Certainly, I think they'll be very happy.
We've actually talked about that and agreed to ask your indulgence if we could go through lunch to prepare and then begin right after lunch. 1 o'clock, would that be,
Well,
if that's acceptable, that's right in?